There's something truly magical about the Monte Bello vineyard. It sits right on the San Andreas Fault, up at 2,600 feet. You can see just in the layout, the complexity, all of the different aspects that combined go into the quality of Monte Bello. 2026 marks the 50th anniversary of the Judgment of Paris tasting. The tasting was pivotal in propelling California wines onto the world stage. The 1971 Ridge Monte Bello was one of the wines in that tasting. The Judgment of Paris tasting was an idea that an English wine merchant, Stephen Spurrier, had. Stephen at the time had a wine school that he operated in Paris. And he had been tasting a lot of California wines and was impressed by the quality. So he thought it would be interesting to gather a number of California Cabernets and taste those blind in a lineup with some of the first growth Bordeaux's. The tasters who were chosen to assess the wines were French wine professionals. And to the surprise of everyone, not only did the California Cabernet win the red tasting, but it was also a California Chardonnay that won in the white tasting. Up until that point, it was assumed that it was the wines of Europe, and specifically the wines of France, which were the truly fine wines of the world. And that's where those wines came from, and it really couldn't be done anywhere else in the world. So as a result of this tasting, this really shattered that idea. It really encouraged a lot of people in California, but around the world, to take wine seriously and to really have that confidence that they too could make great wine. In 1969, Paul Draper joined as the winemaker for Ridge Vineyards. What Paul brought was a perspective from European traditional winemaking. Paul had spent a lot of time in Bordeaux, tasting, getting to know producers, getting an understanding of how they made wine according to traditional practices. After the initial tasting in 1976, there were a lot of comments to the effect that the California wine had been chosen because it's a riper, more fruit-forward style, and that it presented well as a young wine, but that the wine could not age, and that over time, it would in fact be the French Bordeaux's that would be favored. Stephen Spurrier, again, in 2006, 30 years after the original tasting, decided to reproduce the tasting in both London and in Napa. The results of that tasting were unanimous that the Ridge was the top wine, the wine that really had lasted and had the complexity of a fine wine that had been perfectly aged. I think the 30th year reenactment was in some ways probably more meaningful than the original tasting. What stood out in particular was the margin by which all of the people tasting the wines blind really preferred the Monte Bello. The wine had held up so well. So many of the tasters used the word fresh. It was still very alive, and that it had many more years to go. It's really a testament to the incredible combination of growing the right grape varietal in the right soil, in the right microclimate. And what that gives is a wine that from the beginning has perfect natural balance. And it's that is really the key to its ageability. Our approach to winemaking today in 2026 is essentially the same as it was in 1976 at the Judgment of Paris tasting. We've stuck to our principles first and foremost because they've given us such great results. It's also that the fewer things that you add to the wine, the more of the purity of the wine you retain. Wine is something that in the end is a connection for us to the earth. By using as few additives as possible, we maintain that connection. Wine tastes much more real. It's really, really a special place to be able to make wine.